Thank you for your interest in Doyle Trading Consultants and our Clean Power Plan Compliance Scenario Model. I'm Sherry Orton, Senior Analyst with the Utility and Natural Gas Group involved in developing this product. This webinar will familiarize you with the content and capabilities of the product using generic dummy states. The full model comes preloaded with data for all states covered by the proposed existing source rule, including generation and emissions by covered units, generation by countable existing renewable sources, planned unit retirements and coal-to-gas repowering, and planned new generating units. As you can see, there's a lot of moving parts here, so let's break it down and take it piece by piece. The first choice the user will make is which state to model. Just pick the one you want from the drop-down list and the model will populate with the appropriate generation and emissions data. The top box also shows what the current emissions rate is from the state's covered fossil units by category, as well as what the state's current emissions rate is, including countable renewable generation. So next, you need to select which goal to measure compliance against. As you can see, we've included both Option 1 and Option 2 goals, as well as what those goals would be if existing hydro generation were included, following the guidance by the EPA on that subject that's included in the proposal. There is a follow-up version to this product which is currently in the works, which will also include some of the alternatives that are lined out in the Notice of Data Availability, which the EPA released in late October. And when that's available, that will be distributed to anyone who's purchased the original product. Now we want to look at what changes we can make to that existing generating fleet and the impact those changes will have on the average emissions rate. The numbers you start out with here reflect currently planned retirements, whether they're coal units or covered other fossil units or combined cycle natural gas, and yes, there are some of those that are planned. Also, if a coal unit has announced it will switch to natural gas, that's pre-programmed in here, and in all cases, the pre-programmed numbers use generation and emissions data that's specific to those units. So if there's a retirement at a unit that wasn't running anyway, it's not going to impact your average emissions rate. So then, beyond that, you can use these scroll bars, like so, to retire a larger chunk of the coal fleet, or retire some other fossil units if they're available, or combined cycle natural gas, and this may raise some eyebrows, but there are a few states which really can't meet these goals without cutting back on combined cycle natural gas generation. You can also repower more of your fleet from coal to natural gas, and the resulting reduction in emissions is reflected in that emissions rate there at the bottom of this section. Now, this does come with planned repowering projects baked into the numbers, but perhaps you don't want to assume that those will happen. The emissions rate for a repowered coal unit is above what most states' emissions rate goal is. So we do give you the option to override that here, and then that will put those repowered units in with the retiring units up in the line above. Now, I don't think anyone is envisioning that there will be wide-scale deployment of carbon capture and sequestration on existing units, but we do give you the option to deploy CCS on a portion of the remaining coal fleet, as well as allow you to designate the average capture rate that would be achieved on that portion. For existing nuclear units, the baked-in assumption is some manner of credit for 5.8% of generation from those units, but you may not want to assume that they will all be in service by 2030, so you can use the scroll bar here to reduce the size of that credit. So, as I'm sure everyone is aware, the proposal assumes that compliance will involve a lot of components beyond just emissions from existing fossil units. So the next section is where the user can adjust those inputs. In the same manner as with the retirement section, you can use the scroll bars to add new nuclear capacity, as well as new combined cycle natural gas. Now, the EPA does assume that states will incorporate new combined cycle units into their implementation plans for the existing source rule, but there are some reasons why that might not be a good assumption to make. So you can use this box here to remove the generation and emissions from those units from the calculated emissions rate. New renewables can be added by specific type with the scroll bars, or you can impose a generic renewable portfolio standard on the state. Now, typically a state's RPS would include existing hydro, so for this calculation, the model includes hydro generation in the RPS percentage, but unless you selected the with hydro goal, it excludes it from the calculated emissions rate. Also, if the chosen renewable portfolio standard doesn't actually result in any new renewable generation being added, it will flash a warning at you to indicate that you haven't actually made any progress. Increasing the percentage of renewables, in this case to 15%, is enough to bring this hypothetical state into compliance, combined with all the other actions we did previously, but let's keep going just to show what other options are available. Building block 4 in the proposal assumes that states can come up with a way to quantify how much generation was avoided by some kind of enforceable energy efficiency program. Without worrying about exactly how a state might go about doing that, we give you the option to apply a percentage of avoided generation and factor the credit for that into the average emissions rate. So it's important to note this is against the expected generation in the final compliance year, assuming an average demand growth rate between now and then. So under our baseline scenario, you're still looking at a roughly 6% increase in electricity demand between now and 2030 if you impose a 10% energy efficiency program. And that brings us to the growth expectation part of this. If we bump the energy efficiency program up to 12%, you can see that this triggers a warning that our collection of compliance actions is resulting in more generation in the final compliance year than we would be expected to need. Which obviously is a problem. So at that point, something has to give in order to get some kind of feasible outcome. So you need to either retire more existing generation or scale back your new renewables, or you can adjust how much demand growth pre-energy efficiency you expect to happen in the state. Our baseline figure comes from the EIA's 2014 Energy Outlook, but you can adjust that figure up or down to suit your particular growth expectations. At the bottom of the calculator, we provide an approximate total for the change in annual coal and natural gas demand due to all of the adjustments from the base case scenario that have been made. These figures do not automatically include the demand changes associated with coal and natural gas retirements or additions, which have been pre-programmed into the base case, but if you would like to include those numbers, simply check the box here. Now let's return to the top of the calculator to what I feel is the most valuable component of the model. Under the EPA's proposal, the states are free to form interstate partnerships without any limitation or restrictions on proximity or number of combined states. So you have literally several billion possible combinations by the time you add 49 different covered states. So we cover some of the intuitive combinations in the report, but if you'd like to explore other groupings, we give you that ability here. Up in the first drop-down box, simply select Region instead of any of the states. The default region will include all of the states in the model, but now you can go over here to the right and select only the states you want to include. Now all parts of the model are recalculated, treating the combined states as a single region, with the appropriately generation-weighted goal for that region as guided by the EPA in the proposal. If we've piqued your interest, our marketing team would be happy to meet with you to answer any questions or provide access to the demo version of the calculator. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to serving your company.